Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Big Mike Sports, Atlanta born, Carolina raised, Detroit driven, yada, yada, yada. I'm your host, as always, Big Mike,
The one and only.
the man himself, and today a preview of Lions at Ravens and a foray into Carolina football. But first, more consequences from the meeting of Miami Hurricanes football and the Big Mike extended universe following Miami's heartbreaking losses to Georgia Tech and UNC. This just in from our people in Miami. Miami head coach Mario Cristobal under fire once again when entering a local store. Instead of putting his vehicle in park to end the drive with a win, he left the car running, which then fumbled into a van full of young women assistants. Texas A&M offense coordinator Bobby Petrino quoted as saying, "They're trying to beat me at everything over there in Miami." And once again, after starting out undefeated with a strong defense, Miami has found themselves in a hole with many questions and seemingly no answers. Costly turnovers on offense, a halftime lead against UNC that almost instantly evaporated with a 21-point Tar Heel third quarter, which is something that UNC is definitely capable of and is what makes them so dangerous to play. You can never quite put them away. But to lose like that after playing close early in the first half is really challenging for the team and the whole coaching staff. Seems like to have these defensive teams struggle so mightily in closing out games is pretty weird. And if you don't turn the ball over 4 times in that game, you probably win. You lose by 2 possessions and you gave the other team 4. Luckily, Miami issues can be fixed with that offense and the turnovers and everything. But unfortunately, it might just be too late as Miami joins Virginia, Syracuse, and Wake Forest at the bottom of the pile in the ACC, while teams like UNC, Florida State, and Duke remain undefeated. And by the time the Saturday games are done, only 2 of those teams will remain undefeated at the top of the conference, as Florida State and Duke face off against each other in a pretty big matchup. Huge Duke defense. Really one of the best defenses in the country in terms of points allowed and certainly in the conference. If you look at that point differential in conference games, that is pretty crazy for Duke, having only allowed 10 points in conference games and 50-something points over the course of the entire season. They played, like 6 games so far this year? Florida State, nothing to sniff at either. Another one of the best teams in the conference and the nation. But, one that is kind of, their weaknesses can be found, let's just put it that way, with that close win at Boston College. Of course, Florida State will have the advantage of playing at home in this one. It'll be pretty tough traveling for Duke. But with the total only being 49 points and FSU favored by 14.5, I think that Duke is a really easy pick in this game. I think it's going to be a really, really close game as the Duke defense does what it does best, and that is limiting the run and, just limiting the other teams in every facet. That passing defense is probably even better than the rushing defense. So it's going to be tough for Jordan Travis and the Seminoles to get things going against Duke, unless, Duke just doesn't show up and the crowd is able to get on the Seminole side early and they're able to put up some points early. If Florida State puts up some early points in that game, I don't know if Duke would necessarily have the ability to come back. So if you're Florida State, you definitely want to strike quick against that defense, or else it might just be a long, very drawn-out day for you. But UNC fans might just have to be Duke fans for this weekend, as Duke beating Florida State would be huge in terms of ramifications for the conference, and plus it would give Florida State one conference loss, leaving the only 2 undefeated teams left to be UNC and Duke, which would then set them up well for a face-off later on in the season as UNC plays Duke. Both teams could technically go into that game undefeated in the conference if Duke is able to pull off this game, which would be pretty huge. And, I think UNC fans would probably enjoy seeing the team play Duke at a chance for supremacy in the conference, at a chance to go to the conference title game. So, huge game this weekend as Duke and Florida State play each other. Huge ramifications for the conference still. And it's going to be a really exciting race for the conference here. We still are picking Florida State and UNC to go to the conference championship. However, that's been the pick for our staff for really the entire season, as we have a lot of Florida State and UNC fans here. And from our people down there in Chapel Hill, they're currently giving UNC still only a 10% playoff chance as we all know that UNC likes to kind of crumble at certain points in the season when the pressure gets on, and they say that Jesus needs to take the wheel. Now, another Carolina team that truly needs Jesus, this Jesus not being Drake May, although I guess that is possible if some trades happen later on in the offseason, but probably pretty unlikely. But anyway, that Jesus is not going to be Drake May for the Panthers, most likely. They are hoping it will be Thomas Brown, who head coach Frank Reich relinquished play call duties to earlier today. Thomas Brown hoping to bring some energy to the offense and the team. And energy is probably exactly what that offense needs. It's been really sluggish in the early going here. Not a whole lot of yards per attempt for Bryce Young. Not a whole lot of opening up of the playbook or the field. Mostly a lot of 10-yard passes to Adam Thielen, that kind of thing, which Thielen is very good at. He's been a huge elite, you could say, slot receiver for the Panthers so far this season. But you need a little bit more production from some of your other receivers, such as deep threat DJ Chark and rookie Jonathan Mingo. So if Thomas Brown is able to kind of open the offense up in that regard and involve some of the other receivers at least a little bit, and maybe throw, into the intermediate part of the field a little more, or hell, even throw a deep ball every now and then, that would get really crazy. But yeah, Frank Reich's offensive play calling obviously not working so far this year. I guess they're trying to, start Bryce Young slow, but we've seen the results from that. He's been playing better as the season goes on, I should say. He threw a few touchdowns against the Lions, which I think doubled his season total, if not a little more. So we've seen some good things from him. We've seen some flashes. They just haven't exactly allowed the proverbial cat to get out of the bag on offense. So hopefully Thomas Brown will be able to do that. We're looking at the Panthers' upcoming schedule. Showdowns with the Texans and Colts coming up in the next 2 weeks. And those are a couple of feisty teams looking to prove something this year. But both teams still very beatable, especially if the Panthers' defense is able to show up, especially against the Colts with Minshew out there. Starting for the Colts now that Anthony Richardson is done for the season. So yeah, if the Panthers don't show up to that Texans game, I don't know what game they ever will show up to this season. I mean, you're going up against Stroud, the guy who some people thought you might take up there at the top. You took Bryce Young instead. Bryce Young's going to want to show up for that game and do some crazy stuff. Hopefully, if Thomas Brown on the offense lets him. And then, you're going to want to limit Stroud because you got pride on the line, basically. You don't want to get embarrassed by this team that's doing well with the guy you weren't able to get. Plus, you're going to be coming off the bye week, which is going to be really helpful in kind of getting the team together. Really trying to see what you can really scramble up as you try and go on a little run, maybe get a few wins in this second part of the season following the bye. It's not entirely out of the question. We've seen some teams like that tanking Dolphins team with Brian Flores able to win some games down the stretch to kind of turn it into a different season because, that Dolphins team had a winless streak going to start the year. People were kind of throwing around the question of whether they were ever going to win a game the entire season. Then they ended up winning 5 games and almost got themselves out of the running for Tua. But no other team was getting Tua besides the Dolphins. It was kind of destiny at that point. And the Panthers also play the Bears on November 9th, which could be a super big, chance for a win, especially if, for whatever reason, Justin Fields is not able to play. I know he got injured in the last game. Not exactly sure how long the injury is lasting for him at this point. But, like we said, this is a make or break stretch for the team. The next 3 games that they play, it's going to be your best chances for wins. Against the Titans, you might be able to win that one. The Titans have had struggles of their own. And I was also thinking they could possibly win a divisional game, especially against either the Saints or the Falcons, as they played the Saints really close earlier in this year, losing 20-17. Then first game of the year, they lost to the Falcons 24-10, which, was Bryce Young's first game. He was trying to do, whatever he could just to try and, get completions and feel comfortable at all. He threw a couple interceptions to Jesse Bates, but the Falcons team isn't necessarily a team that's getting stronger as the season goes along, I don't think. They've had some struggles of their own, so definitely some winnable games on the schedule here. The emphasis is really going to be on Thomas Brown on the offense, being able to open it up for Bryce Young, being able to stay on the field, keeping the defense off the field, Because on paper, this is still a pretty decent defense. They have some pieces like Brian Burns pressuring the quarterback and stuff like that. They just got to stay off the field and let the offense, do what they can at some point. So, yeah, there's still some hope for this team. Can't lose it all. And you also can't put too much blame on Bryce Young because there are plenty of quarterbacks who went on to have great careers who struggled in their rookie year. So you just got to give him some time, let him grow, and if the coaching staff needs to, take the top off, let him out a little bit and see what he can really do because he is really an electric player when he's able to make something happen. So looking forward to the rest of the Panthers season for sure and seeing what they can put together.
Perhaps.
And here we are once again, the Lions going on the road to face a super tough team. And this could be the toughest team that the Lions have faced all season, as that Ravens defense is one of the best, if not the best, in the NFL, only giving up 295 total yards per game, 197 through the air. That's one of the best in the NFL. And then just under 100 yards per game on the ground allowed by that team. And they have the X factor of all X factors, of course, Lamar Jackson. Now, some people really like to throw around the Barry Sanders comparison with certain players all willy-nilly, but me being who I am and this team being the team that I support, I don't really like to make that comparison with anybody, really. So it's really important if I ever do. I will say that Lamar Jackson is the one player that I've seen in my time who runs a little bit like Barry Sanders in terms of just the feel and, his movements being so fluid and so natural, yet looking so unnatural at the same time. Definitely look up some Lamar Jackson high school highlights, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. The guy's like a Zen master going up against children. It's really unreal just to watch him play.
It seems to me like you're the expert.
In high school. Kind of like watching some Derrick Henry high school highlights. Dude's like 6'4" as a sophomore in high school. But anyway, yeah, so this is going to be another super tough test for the Lions. And of course, their injury report is going to be full once again. Big names on the offensive line. Frank Ragnow, a new addition to the injury report. And Jonah Jackson still appearing. Brian Branch, questionable. Hopefully he'll be able to play in this game. Really excited to see him come back. Such an electrifying player and a really important piece of the defense. And I don't know who's going to end up playing a running back for this team in this game because all of a sudden, Craig Reynolds, the Lions' third-string running back that got a few carries in the last game and scored a touchdown against the Panthers, looked really good in that game. He's all of a sudden on the injury report as questionable, along with the usual suspects. We already know that Montgomery is dealing with that rib injury. Who knows if he'll be able to go. And then Jahmyr Gibbs still appearing on the injury report. Still really optimistic that Gibbs will play in this game. It could be a super huge opportunity for him if Montgomery is indeed not able to go. I think that Craig Reynolds would definitely still take on the workhorse role, leaving Gibbs as still more of a complementary back. But still, with the way that the Lions O-line was able to block in that Panthers game, opening up some really big holes with that zone blocking scheme, I would really like to see Gibbs get back out there and run through some of those holes because with his speed, he can take it pretty far pretty quickly. And then Laporta, on the injury report, also, he was limited in the walkthrough. I'm not too worried about him. Gibbs also limited participant. Hopefully that means that they'll play. Montgomery did not participate. Dan Campbell in one of his press conferences said, we'll have to see throughout the week going into, Friday, Saturday, how he feels in those days to see if he'll actually play. I'm not really expecting him to play, but we'll see. It is possible. So not the most concerning injury report if, maybe half of these players play. But, there's definitely some guys that we want to see back. But we've seen the Lions have a lot of depth this year. It's a pretty crazy sight to see. Some of their backup players stepping up in this kind of next man up thing. And the team's still able to beat teams by more than one possession. I mean, kind of 14-point wins in a few of these games in a row. So the Lions rolling, of course. The Ravens kind of up and down. It depends on what kind of team shows up. But it's going to be a pretty low-scoring game when the Ravens are playing because all their games have been slugfest so far. Like 24-16, 17-10, and I think 28-3. in that Browns game, so expect it to be low scoring. I don't want to be the 24-21 guy again, but it could be like 21-17, 24-17, that kind of score. Just depends on what the Lions offense is able to do. We saw last week the Lions offense kind of struggled to run the ball against such a good rushing defense. This Ravens rushing defense will be similar to that Buccaneers defense last week, but also the Ravens passing defense is even better than the Buccaneers pass defense. So interesting to see how Goff and the guys respond if the running game gets shut down. Expect a lot of pressure, which is another reason why you want the offensive line to be as healthy as possible. Not that it's a bad offensive line anyway. I think they'll be able to hold up, but still, Goff with that pressure, he'll definitely be trying to stay upright as much as possible. Maybe they'll try and get the ball out quicker as well. Maybe we won't see as much deep passing, but you never know. Ben Johnson always likes to shake it up anyway, especially against an opponent such as this. And it'll also be kind of a revenge game for the Lions, as we all remember the Justin Tucker game, the 66-yarder NFL record to beat the Lions in Detroit a couple seasons ago. Hopefully the Lions will be able to hit him back one at their own place. You know that at least a few of the guys are going to be thinking about that one. The Lions have not been very successful against Baltimore in the past several seasons, but Lamar Jackson also being such an electric mobile quarterback, the Lions haven't been the greatest at facing mobile quarterbacks over the years. So this could be a good stepping stone to show how much the team has grown if they're able to limit Lamar Jackson in any meaningful way. Of course, there are always going to be a couple plays where he busts loose, whether on a deep pass or a run, especially with his ability to extend the play and get outside the pocket. But this Lions defense accepts any challenge, and like we've said over the course of the year, this team can play anybody and compete with anybody. So it's going to be a hard-fought matchup. The Ravens 3-point favorite, total only 42. We like the Lions plus 3 points, and I think the score of the game is going to be right at the number. Might lean over, honestly, with how good the Lions offense can be. And, the Ravens offense has shown an ability to make some big plays so far this year, so maybe lean over, but I'm not super on the over. Ravens also slightly favored to win in terms of win probability. So yeah, this is going to be an exciting test for the Lions. See really how good they are. This is going to be kind of a playoff atmosphere against a playoff type team with a really, really tough defense and a really competitive quarterback with that X factor speed. So yeah, this is going to be a really intriguing matchup, really black and blue type of game. Hopefully not too many players get injured in this one, as the injury report's already pretty full, and it's going to be a pretty hard-fought matchup, but one that we're very excited about for sure.
Hi, Mike. What's new?
And that will be all for Big Mike today from Big Mike Studios.
It seems to me like you're the expert.
Yeah, we'll have a new studio the next time we're on camera. We might come out with some audio-only episodes later on in the week, but next time we have a video episode, we're going to be in a brand new studio. Really excited, so I hope to see you then.